The 1990s didn't just give us grunge and dial-up internet. It delivered animated films so controversial, they made parents clutch their pearls and critics lose their minds. One movie literally broke MPAA's rating system. Another got censored 6 different times before theaters would even show it. These aren't your Saturday morning cartoons. 1. South Park, bigger, longer, and uncut, 1999. This wasn't just pushing boundaries, it was obliterating them with dynamite. Trey Parker and Matt Stone crafted what became the most profanity-laden animated film in history, setting a Guinness World Record with 399 curse words, including 139 F-bombs. The MPAA went ballistic, slapping it with an NC-17 rating not once, not twice, but 6 consecutive times. The battle was legendary. Parker and Stone kept submitting revised cuts, each one somehow more offensive than the last. When the MPAA demanded they change the original title, All Hell Breaks Loose, for containing the word hell, the duo responded with bigger, longer, and uncut as a cheeky double entendre that sailed right over the censors' heads. Studio executives at Paramount literally begged them to tone it down for a wider audience. But Parker and Stone held firm. They wanted an R rating, or nothing. The film became a brilliant meta-commentary on censorship itself, with one character declaring, "Remember what the MPAA says. Horrific, deplorable violence is okay, as long as people don't say any naughty words." MPAA President Jack Valenti later admitted he regretted not giving it the NC-17 rating after all. The controversy paid off massively. Despite the restricted rating, it earned $83.1 million worldwide and became the highest-grossing R-rated animated film of its time. It even scored an Oscar nomination for Best Original Song with Blame Canada. Critics called it brilliant satire disguised as crude comedy. Roger Ebert praised it as the year's most slashing political commentary. And this was competing against Oliver Stone films. The film's impact was so significant that the MPAA expanded its rating system in 2000 to include detailed content descriptions, directly because of this movie. Parker and Stone had essentially forced Hollywood's censorship board to evolve. When your animated movie about foul-mouthed third graders changes how films get rated forever, you know you've struck gold. 2. Cool World, 1992. Ralph Bakshi's return to feature films after a 9-year hiatus became one of the decade's most spectacular disasters. What started as Bakshi's vision for a dark horror film about interdimensional relations between humans and cartoons got butchered by producer Frank Mancuso Jr. and star Kim Basinger, who wanted something more family-friendly. The behind-the-scenes warfare was brutal. Bakshi's original concept involved genuine horror elements and darker themes, but the studio demanded a PG-13 rating to compete with family films. When Bakshi refused to compromise his vision, Mancuso essentially hijacked the project. The tension reached its peak when Bakshi reportedly punched Mancuso in the face during a heated argument about the film's direction. What audiences got was a confused mess that satisfied nobody. Too weird and violent for kids, too sanitized for adults who wanted Bakshi's signature edge. The film's marketing campaign created its own controversy when Paramount altered the Hollywood sign to include a 75-foot cutout of the character Hollywood. Local residents were outraged by the provocative imagery and filed lawsuits to stop it. The movie bombed spectacularly, earning just $14.1 million against a $28 million budget. Critics savaged it mercilessly. Roger Ebert called it surprisingly incompetent, and questioned how an animated film could be so poorly planned. The film's integration of live action and animation was particularly criticized as amateurish compared to Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Despite the failure, Cool World developed a cult following among animation fans who appreciated Bakshi's uncompromising artistic vision, even in its compromised form. Many saw it as a tragic example of studio interference destroying a potentially groundbreaking film. The controversy cemented Bakshi's reputation as animation's ultimate outsider artist. 3. Beavis and Butt-Head Do America, 1996. Mike Judge's big-screen adaptation of his MTV hit arrived at the height of moral panic about youth violence and media influence. The timing couldn't have been worse. Just years after the show had been blamed for real-world incidents, including a tragic house fire allegedly inspired by Beavis's fire obsession, the movie faced intense scrutiny. The film pushed every button imaginable. Congressional hearings had already targeted the TV series for corrupting America's youth, and the movie doubled down on everything that made parents furious. Constant toilet humor, substance use, and the protagonist's complete lack of moral compass made it a lightning rod for culture war battles. Critics were divided in fascinating ways. Roger Ebert, surprisingly, defended the film as brilliant social satire, arguing that Beavis and Butt-Head weren't meant to be celebrated, but rather represented everything wrong with American culture. He compared them to characters in Dilbert, suggesting Judge was actually critiquing the mindless consumerism and narcissism they embodied. The MPAA gave it a PG-13 rating, which sparked its own controversy. Parents' groups argued the content was clearly inappropriate for teenagers, while others questioned why animated violence and stupidity received lighter treatment than live-action equivalents. The rating seemed arbitrary and inconsistent with the board's usual standards. Despite the backlash, the film was a massive commercial success, earning $63.1 million against a $12 million budget. It broke December opening weekend records and proved that controversy could translate directly into ticket sales. The success validated Judge's approach and paved the way for more adult-oriented animated films throughout the late 90s. 4. Fire and Ice, 1983, re-released 1990. Ralph Bakshi's collaboration with legendary fantasy artist Frank Frazetta had its most controversial life during 1990s video and cable reruns. What had been a relatively overlooked theatrical release in 1983 became a lightning rod for debates about representation and content when it found new audiences on home video. The film's portrayal of women sparked fierce criticism from feminist groups during the 90s culture wars. Every female character was designed with exaggerated proportions and minimal clothing, directly translating Frazetta's art style to animation. Critics argued it reduced women to mere objects for male fantasy, while defenders claimed it was simply faithful to the source material's aesthetic. The rotoscoping technique, which traced over live-action footage to create realistic movement, created an uncanny valley effect that made the content feel more explicit than traditional animation. When Princess Tigra appeared on screen in revealing outfits, it felt more real and thus more controversial than typical cartoon imagery. Religious groups also targeted the film for its violence and occult themes. The story's good versus evil battle included wizardry, dark magic, and brutal combat that made some Christian organizations classify it alongside genuinely occult entertainment. Video stores received complaints, and some chains moved it to restricted sections. The film's defenders argued it was simply a straightforward fantasy adventure in the tradition of Conan movies, unfairly targeted because animation was assumed to be for children. This highlighted the broader cultural confusion about adult animation's place in American entertainment. The controversy kept it in the public eye longer than its artistic merits might have warranted. 5. The Thief and the Cobbler, 1993, various versions. Richard Williams' decades-long passion project became one of animation's most tragic casualties when it was seized by different distributors and butchered into multiple versions. The Miramax version, heavily recut and filled with celebrity voices, sparked outrage among animation purists and became a symbol of Hollywood's disrespect for artistic vision. Williams had worked on the film for nearly 30 years, creating what many considered the most technically ambitious hand-drawn animation ever attempted. When he lost control due to budget overruns, the resulting versions were so different from his original that he disowned them entirely. The controversy wasn't about content, but about artistic integrity and corporate interference. Different versions were released in different markets with wildly varying content. Some included musical numbers, others didn't. Character names changed between versions. The story itself was altered so significantly that audiences who saw different cuts were essentially watching different movies. This created massive confusion and anger among animation fans. The controversy highlighted broader issues about international distribution and artistic ownership. The original version contained Middle Eastern themes and imagery that some distributors felt were too complex or potentially controversial for Western audiences, leading to significant cultural sanitization. Critics who had seen Williams's original work-in-progress footage were furious about what they considered vandalism of a masterpiece. The situation became a rallying point for independent animation advocates and remains one of the most contentious examples of studio interference destroying an artist's vision. 6. Ghost in the Shell, 1995. Mamoru Oshii's cyberpunk masterpiece arrived in America, carrying massive controversy about violence, themes, and cultural content. What Japan considered a thoughtful science fiction film, American distributors worried was too intense and philosophically complex for mainstream audiences. The film's depiction of violence was unlike anything American audiences had seen in animation. Bodies exploded in graphic detail, characters were dismembered, and the overall tone was darker than any animated film in recent memory. The MPAA struggled with how to rate something that looked like a cartoon, but contained content more intense than most R-rated live-action films. Religious groups attacked the film's themes about consciousness, artificial intelligence, and the nature of the soul. The philosophical questions it raised about what makes someone human were seen as challenging religious doctrine about the soul and divine creation. Some Christian organizations labeled it as promoting dangerous ideas about transhumanism. Cultural critics raised concerns about Western audiences misunderstanding the film's Japanese context and themes. They worried that complex philosophical concepts would be lost in translation, leading to the film being dismissed as mere violence or misinterpreted as promoting dangerous ideas about technology replacing humanity. The controversy was compounded by the film's influence on The Matrix, which borrowed heavily from its visual style and themes. When mainstream audiences discovered the Japanese film that had inspired a major Hollywood blockbuster, it created renewed debate about cultural appropriation and the original's controversial elements. Isvin, Princess Mononoke, 1997 U.S. release 1999. Studio Ghibli's environmental epic faced significant resistance from American distributors who couldn't figure out how to market an animated film with such violent and complex themes. Disney, which had acquired distribution rights, struggled with content that defied every assumption about family animation. The film's violence was unprecedented for a Studio Ghibli release. Characters lost limbs, blood flowed freely, and the overall tone was far darker than anything associated with animation in America. Disney executives were reportedly horrified by scenes they felt were inappropriate for the family, audiences they associated with animation. Environmental groups embraced the film's pro-nature message, but industrial organizations attacked it as radical environmentalist propaganda. The film's portrayal of industrial development as inherently destructive was seen as anti-business and anti-progress by conservative critics who felt it promoted dangerous ideas about returning to pre-industrial society. The film's complex moral structure, where no side was entirely good or evil, confused American audiences accustomed to clear heroes and villains in animated films. Critics worried that children wouldn't understand the nuanced storytelling, while others argued it was too sophisticated for its intended audience. Disney's marketing struggled with how to promote an animated film that couldn't be sold as either a children's movie or an adult film. The company eventually gave it a limited release, which critics argued demonstrated American cinema's inability to handle animation as a mature artistic medium. 8. Akira, 1988, peak controversy 1990s. Katsuhiro Otomo's groundbreaking anime experienced its most intense American controversy during the 1990s home video boom, when it became widely available, and parents discovered what their teenagers were watching. What had been a cult theatrical release became a mainstream lightning rod. The film's graphic violence shocked American audiences unprepared for animated content this intense. Exploding bodies, graphic mutations, and psychological horror created outrage among parents who assumed animation meant child-appropriate content. Video stores reported constant complaints, and many moved it to restricted sections. Religious groups attacked the film's themes about psychic powers and transcendence as promoting occult beliefs. The character Akira's godlike abilities and the film's spiritual themes were interpreted as dangerous mysticism that could influence young viewers toward non-Christian beliefs. The film's anti-authority message, showing government and military as corrupt and incompetent, was criticized as promoting dangerous anti-establishment attitudes. During a decade of political conservatism, the film's revolutionary themes were seen as potentially inspiring real-world rebellion among impressionable youth. Medical professionals raised concerns about the film's intense strobe effects and rapid visual changes, which could trigger seizures in susceptible viewers. This was years before the famous Pokemon incident, making Akira an early example of animation's potential to cause physical harm to viewers. Part 9. The Iron Giant, 1999. Brad Bird's seemingly innocent tale about a boy and his robot faced unexpected controversy over its anti-war and anti-government themes. What appeared to be a family film contained political messages that made some critics uncomfortable during a period of American military confidence. The film's portrayal of the military as paranoid and trigger-happy angered some conservative critics who felt it promoted dangerous anti-military sentiment. The character of Kent Mansley, a government agent portrayed as incompetent and authoritarian, was seen as unfairly demonizing federal authorities. Religious groups were divided over the film's themes about choice and free will. The Iron Giant's decision to reject his programmed purpose of destruction was interpreted by some as promoting ideas about moral choice that conflicted with certain religious doctrines about predetermined destiny. The film's Cold War setting and themes about nuclear weapons sparked debate about whether children should be exposed to such serious political topics. Some critics argued that animation should focus on simpler, more appropriate themes, rather than tackling complex historical and political issues. Despite critical acclaim, the film's box office disappointment was partially attributed to marketing confusion about its target audience. Distributors struggled to sell an animated film with serious themes, highlighting ongoing American discomfort with animation as a medium for mature storytelling. 10. Titan A.E. 2000 Production Controversy 1990s. Don Bluth's ambitious science fiction epic faced controversy throughout its troubled 1990s production, with studio interference, budget battles, and creative disputes that became public spectacles. The film's failure became a symbol of traditional animation's struggle against computer graphics. Fox's handling of the project sparked industry outrage when executives repeatedly interfered with Bluth's vision, demanding changes to make it more commercially appealing. The director's battles with the studio became public, creating controversy about artistic integrity versus commercial demands. The film's environmental themes about Earth's destruction were attacked by some critics as promoting despair about humanity's future. Conservative commentators argued that the film's apocalyptic vision was inappropriate for young audiences and promoted dangerous pessimism about human civilization. Religious groups criticized the film's spiritual elements and its portrayal of humans as capable of creating new worlds, which some interpreted as promoting ideas about human divinity that conflicted with religious doctrine about divine creation. The film's massive budget and eventual failure sparked industry-wide debates about the future of traditional animation. Its $75 million budget was seen as excessive for an animated film, and its poor performance was used as evidence that audiences no longer wanted hand-drawn animation in the computer age. These films didn't just push boundaries, they redefined what animation could be and sparked cultural battles that continue today. From the MPAA's rating system overhaul to ongoing debates about violence in animation, their impact reaches far beyond entertainment. Which of these controversial classics do you think went too far and which were unfairly targeted? Drop your thoughts in the comments and tell us. Should animation be held to different standards than live-action films? Or is a cartoon just a cartoon regardless of content?